How do we have joy in the face of external events that seem horrible?
Hmm.
Well, I could answer that question easily. I could talk about emptiness, I could talk about impermanence, I could talk about understanding that the dreamlike quality of the world, or the dreamlike quality of this very body and this very speech and this very situation. But that would be robbing you of developing that yourself, and then it will be perfectly clear. Because the substrate that underlies all of this, the source of all of this, everything that you can see, imagine seeing, hear, taste, smell, whatever, all of that comes from one source. And that source is unmitigated joy, brilliance, refulgence. Uh, it's it's not speakable.
Mm.
And so, with that as your foundation, then what happens on the surface? It's like asking the ocean, how can you be happy when there's a hurricane on the surface? It means nothing to the ocean. Where are you coming from, and what have you learned?
I'm coming from a slumber, and but waking out of it. Um, as far as what I've learned, there's a lot of ongoing learnings this week. One of them is you said this a lot, but the world is always teaching. Everything is always teaching.
All things are teaching at
Um,
all times. Yeah, good.
right. So that's been very apparent this week in many different ways. Um,
That's a sign of you, not of the world particularly. That's a sign of your growth, not of the world changing. Would you say that seems
yeah,
fair? Good.
yeah,
So that's progress. Good.
yeah. I
Questions?
feel everything's always teaching, but whether you're receptive to the teaching or is not is
And as you
is not
grow,
up.
you realize that the human circumstance is to learn or not learn, and usually get punished. But you know what I'm saying.
Say what?
The human circumstance is to either open your eyes and learn, or seal yourself off and get punished repeatedly, right? But
Yeah.
the way has its ways. Okay, questions.
A few things. Um, so one of the things that has been teaching me is I've had a neighbor in the unit above me that's been doing extensive construction over the past few weeks. Well, no, the past 2 months. Um, and so there's a few things for me to pay attention to there. One of them is I pay attention to myself when going through this. And there's a few things. One, like I can notice that I get upset about it. It's the obvious one. Um,
So a chance to learn forbearance and other things, but keep going.
yeah, I'm getting to my main question on this point. Um, there's a chance to be patient, observe the mind, and I think about it, and there's two reactions that I've noticed going on. There's one which is like the animal reaction to disturbance, where a cat or dog, when a vacuum goes on, they get disturbed, and so there's like you know the body
Sure.
being right.
Of
But
course,
then
yeah.
there's yeah. But then on top of that, the mind starts going, "Oh, this has been going on for 2 months. Like, I can't believe this guy's, you know, still doing this and blah blah blah." Um, So there's that reaction as well. Seems the body reaction, there's nothing I can do about that, but the mind reaction,
not in the short term, no.
What about in the long term?
Well, in the long term, you can condition your body to get used to anything. I remember walking onto the pediatric neurology ward where I was going to be for a month, and there was literally 18 little kids, screaming their heads off at the same time. They were in pain. It was pediatric neurology. Maybe they'd just done blood draws or something. I don't know. But they were all screaming at I mean, it was the most noxious thing that the human ears can hear, pretty much. But the neurologist, the pediatric neurologist, I'll never forget this, walked like it was nothing at all. Just like didn't even notice it. And I'm going, good God, man, can't you hear those kids are screaming in pain and yelling and crying, and it's just a horrible noise that kids make. It didn't even notice it. I found it extremely, extremely difficult, but by the end of the month, it didn't bother me. Then I rotated onto another unit, so oh well. No, so the body will what's the word for that? Acclimate and attenuate its response eventually, if you let it. But by then your neighbor will be done. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You've seen those Buddhas with the sharp teeth, the Herukas, the wrathful deities in Tibetan Buddhism, and Bon, B-O-N. It sounds like you got some living upstairs.
Yeah.
They're still Buddhas.
Right. And so the question, the dilemma I have, I talked to another neighbor about it who was also affected, and he was telling me like, oh, we have to talk to the HOA, do something about it, get compensated for it because it's not okay. They didn't give us a heads up, this and that, and
they didn't give you a heads up at all?
No.
Oh, boy.
And they also lied about it. They said it was going to be a week of noise, and it's been 2 months.
That's unpleasant.
Yeah. And so then,
aren't there sound regulations? I mean, if you've got an HOA, aren't there sound? I thought the purpose of an HOA was to like protect the residents from.
Right, and they're not doing their job. And so then the question is, well, should I take up the responsibility of like making a case about this, for the sake of everybody else being affected? It can be. I am not naturally inclined to like confront people, so it can be a teaching on how to responsibly confront situations.
What happens if you have a loud party at night in your situation?
So I don't know. I don't know what the HOA rules are yet. I've been trying to get them, but the city has rules.
Yeah, you may want to look those up before you go doing anything.
What's that?
You may want to look it up and also find out who it is and ask them. I mean, talk to them first.
I have, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When are they going to be done?
The latest they've said is the end of September.
Whoa.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess I'm wondering, like, am I wasting my time and energy on this, or is this like a valid?
Well, if you don't know the regulations, yes, you are wasting your time. I mean, the first thing is to find out what are the rules. So.
No, that's what I'm spending time and energy trying to figure that out.
Is it that hard to do?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
I don't
unfortunately.
know. I don't know anything about HOAs. And for other people outside of America, uh, homeowners association, right? Homeowner, and it's a
Hmm.
an organization of homeowners that set regulations so people don't let their yards get all crazy or let their animals run around loose or have wild parties at night. And so there's usually a little booklet of regulations, but or something online. But yeah, I don't know about any of that stuff. Sorry. Another question.
We'll just follow up on that. It also made me realize, like, I know nothing about the legal system or and the law and stuff. And, uh, it's made me want to learn more about it.
Good, good. Yeah, you should know about the world, and law is increasingly a part of it. As a country becomes more and more bureaucratic and encrusted with that, you need to understand at least how it started.
Yeah.
So yeah, learning about the law is a good thing.
Okay. Um, I've been you said this. I think it was last time. You said yesterday's clarity is useless. Something along those lines.
Yesterday's clarity is useless.
Is that that's what you said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I've been contemplating that, and it. I mean, it seems apparent. It seems. Um,
Or yesterday's understanding is outdated.
hmm,
Something like that. It's an infinite road of or I should say, endless road of understanding, of comprehension, of insight, of clarity. And so if you stop, you're probably missing something.
what do you mean by stopping?
Oh, you develop you buy into some doctrine or you buy into some belief or you go, oh, I understand now and it's all over. And
Hmm.
I've got it now. I understand it. It being the magic and mystery of this world. It just keeps going. It's incredible. It's like in science. The further they go, the more beautiful it gets. Say in biology or even physics,
Hmm.
it just gets more and more intricate and beautiful and complex. It's like, yeah. So it's kind of set up for us that way. We can't penetrate beyond a certain point. As the Sufis say, the secret protects itself. But it doesn't protect itself by setting up a wall. It sets up a door and invites you to walk through it. And then when you walk through it, you go, you see wondrous new things over and over, whether it's biology, physics, philosophy, I mean, real philosophy or whatever, right? Now, if it's man
Hmm.
made, there's an end to it. But we're not talking here about man made. We're talking about something beyond what words could describe. I've heard somebody recently, they were trying to invent new words to describe. Well, this is analogous, but they're just trying to find words to describe or to name some of the things that are going on with LLMs, and that our
Hmm.
ability to see what's actually happening with these large language models, LLMs, is limited by our vocabulary, which is true.
Yeah,
So
that's
just
funny.
you can keep going. You don't have to worry about it running out.
Yeah, I had some thoughts related to that recently, actually. The I don't know if we want to go down this
No, let's stick
topic,
to
but
Dharma. Let's stick to pursuit of truth with a capital T.
So on the topic of clarity, when I noticed like the more I sit quietly in a day or a week,
Mm-hmm.
the more clarity. But then there's weeks where there's a lot going on and I don't have much time to sit quietly. And um,
May I say something about that sitting quietly?
hmm
It's a very powerful practice, but at times it seems like nothing's happening. But then at other times, a lot happens. And you never, it's hard to know
hmm
which is which beforehand.
Yeah,
So I'm just saying that for the general public. So sitting quietly
but
is a good idea. At least do it a little bit every day, preferably in the morning. And then watch the waves of potentialities, the waves of opportunity and reward is the word that comes to mind. I don't know if that's the right word. It's hard to know when it arrives. And so again, patience is very critical in that particular practice.
hmm
Now in the
I
old
think
days, there was
the
you could just sit around and you'd have this every night. You'd be lying under. There'd be the stars. There was no TV, no radio, no electricity or phones or anything like that. So there was much more time to be in tune with what is. But now in the modern age, we have to make time for that.
hmm
Go ahead.
well, two things. One, I was going to say that for me, the thing I have the most trouble with, I think, right now is the discipline of making time for it. Um,
I think, did I tweet this out? I don't know if I did, but it was a quote that I saw that I thought was really quite stunning. It said that we spend the second half of our lives living out the habits that we developed in the first half.
I think we talked about this
Did we?
a few
Okay.
weeks ago.
At any rate, so make good habits.
hmm
And then they just hold you in good stead, reading, contemplating,
hmm
even sitting still in the morning. Enjoy your cup of tea, if nothing else.
hmm My my hardest thing with the mornings is that I just feel immediately like pressure to like I have things to do for work and I want to get to them immediately.
You have to set
If it's not the
you have to set your priorities in this world.
Mm,
Your most important work, your most important investment, your most important thing that you do is cultivate your own being. It doesn't seem like that because you don't send yourself a paycheck every day, but you are the instrument of your life.
yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
And no one's talking about a huge amount of commitment, 20 minutes in the morning, just read a little sutra, drink your tea, get your head on for the day. You have a better day.
Yeah.
So I've been where you're talking about, but I'm also
Mm,
an old man. And I can say that there's some habits that are just good habits.
yeah.
And they're nice to have around. And the yield could be monstrously high when you're young. Monstrously high. If nothing else, you'll do your work better, more creatively, more smoothly.
hmm
People need to watch out for. I remember this from being an officer in a corporation. People would keep working even though their eyes were glazed, and they weren't thinking straight, and they're just running around like crazy people. And it's almost like they enjoyed doing that, especially the senior people after
Oh,
hour. Like it gets 5, 6, 7, 8. They're trying to get a grant in, or they're trying to get this proposal in, or whatever it might be, depending on the organization, and with no attention to what the instrument that they were using. It'd be like
yeah.
using a
I've seen
pencil
that.
after the lead is broken off, and the thing's down to a little nub, and you can't really write anything properly anyways, but they don't even notice.
Yeah.
Don't be like that.
I mean, I've seen that so much at work.
Yeah, so just observe it and try not to get it on you.
Yeah.
Because it is contagious.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, my technique for that is that when I realize that because it comes from like there's the idea, oh, you have to work 9 to 5, so you have to be working that whole time. Like I've seen it a lot with that, where at an office, people, you can't work. You're working an office job. You can't program 9 to 5 straight, right? Like you need breaks and you need. But for some reason, the idea that you can do that is around, and it's
I'm talking about after 5. I'm talking about working late. In this, that's what I'm referring to. And then when I think back about it, maybe they were trying to build a team spirit or something, because they certainly weren't getting any good work done. They were undoing the work that they had done during the day. The good work they'd done during the day, they decided to. Yeah. So.
Well, that is the idea that like the more I work, if I just work more, then I'll be better than the competition.
Something like that, but it's not true.
Yeah.
Questions?
So you mentioned how, like, sitting quietly has different, sometimes a lot happens, sometimes nothing happens, and it's sort of just random cycles.
I didn't say random. I didn't say random.
Well, seemingly random, or as in to say that you can't necessarily predict it.
Fair enough.
And you've talked about like states versus stages before.
Mm-hmm.
And so
let me just explain to whoever's listening. A state is like higher consciousness, or spills and chills that occur in the Dharma, from meditation or whatever you're doing, chanting or whirling, or whatever you might be doing. Those states occur, and those can be induced by any number of things: meditation, mantra, psychedelic drugs, sleep deprivation. There's any number of things, or group hysteria. There's any number of states that can be induced. And those are fun and fine when you're starting out. But what we're after here is stage. Now, a stage is a permanent level of development. So in this work, we differentiate between a state of consciousness and a stage of development. And the idea here is to stabilize a state of consciousness into a permanent stage of development, so then you can move on to the next stage of development. All right, thank you for the little plug. That's a Sufi formulation, by the way. Okay, go ahead.
So it reminds me, in the Light of the Golden Flower, there's a line where it talks about crystallizing the practice. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of the same idea of stabilizing?
Well, this is the secret of the Golden Flower. Beautiful translation. Very different than the one that Jung, J-U-N-G, used, the one by, I think it's Wilhelm or somebody. This is a complete translation and an accurate translation, so it's basically a different book. But in this book, this book is admixed with a little bit of Taoist alchemy. And so I don't know, it's probably referring to an alchemical set of metaphors. Don't worry about those.
Okay. But aside from that, my question is how do you stabilize a state like that? Is it just consistent practice? Is it understanding? Is it something else?
Depends on the stage. but it's a natural evolution. It's like the stage between, say, 6 years of age and 8 years of age. There's a change. There's a developmental change. So it's going to happen naturally if you don't block it. And I think that would be the way to put it. If you continue to practice, then you will evolve through these stages. The first stage, by the way, being joy. And there's a beautiful chapter or book. In this book, I keep coming back to the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Flower Ornament Sutra. There's almost a standalone sutra in the middle of it called the 10 Stages. Chapter 26. And in this book, they iterate the stages of psycho-emotional, spiritual development, something like that, into the 10 stages. And each stage has different levels of capacities and powers and insights and things like that. So it's a natural process as long as you're still growing.
Okay.
And you don't block it. These stages of development are very, very important. I mean, we know about the ones that occur, before puberty, and then we know about the one in puberty, and we know young adulthood, but then it just keeps going. We just don't have the words for it. And also, we live in a culture where we don't really acknowledge stages of adult development, but they're very important. I mean, some people have, like George Vaillant, Vaillant, did a series of books on adult development and the different stages of that. Adaptation to Life, I think, is the name of his book, and he uses defense mechanisms as an index, psychological defense mechanisms. Okay, let's keep going.
Okay.
We need some meat on these bones.
On the topic of joy.
Of what? Topic of what?
On the topic of joy.
Joy, yes. The first stage.
I'm guessing there's a difference between joy and excitement.
A huge difference.
Can you explain the difference?
Excitement comes and goes, like happiness. Joy is a stage of development, and that's permanent joy. The first stage. So excitement is an emotion that, comes and goes, and who knows what someone's excited about. And the same thing's true with happiness or sadness. These things just come and go. But when you have a developmental stage, then that signals that it's a permanent state.
I see.
And the first stage of this work is permanent joy. Now, getting to the first stage takes some effort on people's part, but the trade-off is permanent joy.
How can one have permanent joy, like through when they're going through, life events, like if they lose one?
That's a good question. Articulate it again, please.
So if you're saying there's a stage of permanent joy, which is permanent, and I'm wondering...
A stage of development, yeah.
Yeah. So if a person reaches this stage, what happens when they go through a life event such as like losing a loved one? And I'm assuming they still grieve, right? Like,
not in the same way, not at all.
Not at all?
Mm-mm. That's a good question. You've mixed together two big questions. One is the death of someone that you care about, and the other one is the permanent stage of joy. And so first of all, death doesn't mean the same thing. Secondly, there's an understanding of the impermanence of all things. Thirdly, there's a reflection on your own mortality. Fourthly, there's an understanding that the essence of what has been lost, really. What is it, Dylan Thomas? The lover's lost, but the love is not. And so, no, it's totally different. But here, let me read a little bit of this. Book 26, The 10 Stages. Thus have I heard. Once the Blessed One was sojourning in the heaven of control of others' emanations. Not long after his perfect enlightenment, the second week, he was in the palace of the king of that heaven, a shining, radiantly pure treasury of jewels, together with a large group of enlightening beings, all of them beyond regression, and bound to become perfectly enlightened in one lifetime, who had come from different worlds. So let me read that again. With a large group of enlightening beings, all of them beyond regression, and bound to become perfectly enlightened in one lifetime, who had come from different worlds. Those enlightening beings were abiding in the sphere of knowledge of all enlightening beings. Their sphere of action was that of ceaseless penetration into the entries of the realm of knowledge of all enlightened ones. They were skilled in showing all feats of power appropriately timed for the development and liberating guidance of all sentient beings, in order to fulfill all the great vows of enlightening beings in all worlds and times, all ages and lands. They diligently cultivated practices unceasingly. They had fulfilled the inexhaustible stores of virtue, knowledge, and occult powers of all enlightening beings for the benefit of all worldly beings, having attained the highest ultimate reaches of transcendental knowledge and expedient liberative means of enlightening beings. They showed entries into mundane existence and nirvana, while not interrupting the application of means of practices of enlightening beings, sporting freely in the meditations, liberations, concentrations, attainments, and mystic knowledges of enlightening beings. They were skilled in demonstration of all feats of mystic knowledge, having attained the occult powers and command of enlightening beings, going without effort into a single mental instant, into the circles of all Buddhas. They acted as leading interlocutors, holding the wheel of teachings of all Buddhas. They had gone to make offerings to and wait on as many Buddhas. They had realized the manifestations of bodies in all worlds, engaged in the undertaking of the deeds of all enlightening beings. Their voices sounded in all realms without obstruction, and the sphere of knowledge of mind unobstructed in all places and times was revealed to them. They had thoroughly fulfilled the attainments of qualities of all enlightening beings, and their qualities could never be exhaustively explained, even in untold eons. Their names were Diamond Matrix, Jewel Matrix, Lotus Matrix, Matrix of Glory, Matrix of Lotus-like Splendor, Solar Matrix, Sun Matrix, Earth Matrix, Matrix of Lunar Purity, Matrix of Manifestations of all arrays of adornments, Matrix of Illumination of Knowledge, Matrix of Radiance, Matrix of Blossoming Glory, Matrix of Blue Lotus Splendor, Matrix of Celestial Qualities, Matrix of Splendor of Virtue, Matrix of Purity of Unobstructed Knowledge, Matrix of Godlike Majesty, Matrix of Purity, Matrix of Non-Defilement, Matrix of Adornment of Varied Eloquence, Matrix of Radiance of Great Webs of Light Beams, Matrix of Radiance of Power of Splendor of Undefiled Light, Matrix of Pure Radiance of Accumulated Gold, Matrix of Pure Splendor adorned by all characteristics of enlightening beings, Matrix of Glorious Adornments of Diamond Flames, Matrix of Beauty of Flames of Light, Matrix of Light of Majesty of the Stars, Matrix of Unhindered Knowledge of the Treasury of the Sky, Matrix of Sweet Sounds with Unobstructed Sphere of Resonance, Matrix of Spells supporting the aspirations of all beings, Matrix of Adornments of the Ocean, Matrix of Majesty of the Polar Mountain, Matrix of Purity of all Qualities, Matrix of Splendor of those who realize thusness, Matrix of Majesty of the Enlightened and Moon of Liberation. The Buddha was with innumerable lightning beings assembled from various Buddha lands led by Diamond Matrix, these beings being the main ones. And then the scripture goes on into descriptions of 10 stages of development. Now, I've forgotten how we got onto this, and I don't blame myself a bit, because this is really, I'll let it speak for itself. Yeah, let me just do a little bit more. At that time, Diamond Matrix, by the power of the Buddha, entered into the concentration called Light of the Great Vehicle. And as soon as he had done so, there appeared to him as many Buddhas as atoms in 10 billion Buddha lands, from beyond as many worlds as atoms in 10 Buddha lands, in each of the 10 directions, all of whom were alike named Diamond Matrix. Those Buddhas said, "It is good that you have entered into the concentration of enlightening beings." Light of Great Vehicle. In this you are supported by the Buddhas numerous as atoms in 10 billion Buddha lands, beyond worlds as numerous as atoms in 10 billion Buddha lands in the 10 directions, and by the powers of the ancient vows of Vairocana Buddha, and it is also due to the excellence of your virtue and knowledge, so that all enlightening beings may enter the stages of knowledge of the illuminating power of the inconceivable Buddha teachings, to attain all roots of goodness, for skill in analyzing Buddha teachings, for breadth of knowledge of things, for exposition of well-constructed teachings, for the purification of holistic knowledge, so as to be unstained by worldly things, for the purification of the supramundane roots of goodness, for the discovery of particulars of the sphere of inconceivable knowledge, and the realization of the sphere of omniscient knowledge, that is to say, it is for the sake of undertaking an attainment of the 10 stages of enlightening beings, for the sake of correct explanation of skill and setting up the stages of enlightening beings, for the sake of proper focusing onto the teachings of the Buddha to distinguish undefiled phenomenon, for skill with the light of great wisdom and knowing discernment, for entry into complete definitive adaptive knowledge, for the light of eloquence to explain without hesitation or obstruction in accord with differences in capability and station, to fulfill the stages of great discursive knowledge, to never forget the determination for enlightenment, to develop all beings to perfection, and to attain skill and discernment of all situations. So I'll stop there because I'll start going, but go ahead. Oh, I forgot what the question was. So that will induce states at first, but then after you get familiar with it, it triggers. I mean, it's just, it causes the development of the very stages that it's speaking of. Hmm. So it's not only psychoactive, it's a magical text too. But what was your question? It was about joy. How do we have joy in the face of external events that seem horrible? Mm-hmm. Well, I could answer that question easily. I could talk about emptiness, I could talk about impermanence, I could talk about understanding that the dreamlike quality of the world, or the dreamlike quality of this very body and this very speech and this very situation. But that would be robbing you of developing that yourself, and then it will be perfectly clear. Because the substrate that underlies all of this, the source of all of this, everything that you can see, imagine seeing, hear, taste, smell, whatever, all of that comes from one source, and that source is unmitigated joy, brilliance, refulgence. It's not speakable. Mm. And so with that as your foundation, then what happens on the surface? It's like asking the ocean, how can you be happy when there's a hurricane on the surface? It means nothing to the ocean. And the other reason, the reason that you aren't sad when someone dies, I shouldn't say you aren't sad. You may be sad, but underneath that sadness is joy. You may be grieving, but underneath that's joy. Because when you realize where they come from and where they're going and where they are now, number one, you realize they haven't gone anywhere. They're still with you. And compared to this world endurance and its trials and tribulations and the tribulations of carrying around a body like this, this is a real pain in the butt, this thing. And they're free of that, as you will be too. And so I could go for hours and hours and hours how joy is possible on the occasion of a death. But it would sound silly to most people, and it's not the right time. But it's something along those lines.
Okay.
If somebody you love died and you know that there was nothing but peace, and beauty and truth and love and joy beyond joy. That was their station. Now, how sad could you be? You might be sad because you couldn't smell them again. You couldn't hold them. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Very true, but it's not the same thing. Okay, sir.
Um, I had another question. I I think I have got the answer to it, but it was the last video you posted.
Good. I like questions from those.
You said something like people are looking outside. You have to stop looking outside.
Yes.
And then the question that arose was, well, if everything is mind, how can you look outside for truth?
Correct.
If there, but
So that's
then,
another reason why death has no dominion. But again,
and
people will get lost. Go ahead.
and I think I have the answer, but I guess I want to ask if this is what it means. But by looking outside,
Yeah,
like,
it helps other people to clarify this stuff. There's other people listening.
yeah. And so it means like using thought to like the illusion of outside and the thought is looking with thought. Is that what it means?
Is that
Like,
what means looking with thought?
looking outside. Because if you can't really look outside, because if everything is mind.
Mind, you're saying M-I-N-D?
Yeah.
So now what's the question? The question in that particular video is, why do people arbitrarily decide to draw the limits of their mind? Many people draw the limits of their mind right here at the skull. Other people have a kind of like a balloon-sized idea of their mind. Other people have a beach ball size, and then other people have a luminous egg, 7 feet. But it's all arbitrarily scrawny. Why would you draw the limits there? So that was the purpose of that, was to get people to understand that the boundary of their mind that they're drawing is arbitrary. It's imaginary.
I guess it's an illusion.
It's an illusion, but it's got well, there are boundaries. There are Markov blankets. There are perceptual things that exist at a certain level, right? Those are real enough. Did we talk about Markov blankets?
A little bit a while ago.
All right, that's a really
They're real at a certain level, right?
I'm sorry?
You said at a certain level?
Yeah, that's at the level of, well, for most part, it's at the level of cells and tissues, but it can be scaled up or down. So now what's the question again? Now, you said about thought. I didn't get the question.
Well, so if the boundary is like not real, then how can someone look outside of it?
I didn't say it wasn't real. I said it was arbitrarily placed. I mean, it's as real as the idea of a self. It's as real as the idea of money or national boundaries. So it's imaginary, but it's real. I mean, it can have an effect. Imaginary things have big impacts in this world.
Mm.
So now, what's the question?
Well, what does it mean to look outside of the boundary?
let's be more concrete because I'm having difficulty finding the boundary to look outside of. So go ahead.
Well, that was my point.
When I look for a boundary, the most immediate thing that jumps to mind is the limits of the known universe.
Mm-hmm.
But that's silly.
Right.
Or I could pull it in and say, okay, the boundary is everything that I can see, as far as I can see into the sky.
Mm-hmm.
But that's silly too. If I pull it in further, I could say, well, anything that's in this room right now.
Mm-hmm.
But that's arbitrary. So now I can take an arbitrary boundary like that and look outside. I could say, okay, I'll draw an arbitrary boundary. I'm going to make it the room or I'll make it my skull. Pick one. Pick one. You pick one for me.
Your skull.
All right. So I'm going to extend that boundary. I'm going to look outside. Now I'm going to include the room in my mind. Mm-hmm. And it's more spacious. A little more spacious. But if I then go draw the boundary at the limits of as far as I can see, right, then it becomes a lot more spacious. And then if I go to the end of the universe, that's more spacious still. And then if I include all the Buddha verses and multiverses and everything else that, they talk about this in this book, by the way, then it becomes even more spacious. And then from there, it's relatively small step to understand the relativity of all things in terms of size. So it's a process, and I don't want to jump too far because it sounds weird to people and it doesn't help them because they need to take the first steps, right? You can't talk about high jumping before people can do hurdles. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm. Does that help?
Sort of.
So what's the difference between a tree thought and another verbal thought?
Just the difference of quality.
Yeah, the trees have much better quality, right, than thoughts that come from language.
Yeah.
But so you can have, when you say thought, what are the boundaries of thought in your mind? Do thoughts have to be verbal?
No.
Okay. So you can smell some cookies baking, and they remind you of a real estate friend of yours, or they remind you when you were a child. So that's a smell thought. Mm-hmm. And the ancients divided consciousness into different consciousness for the different modes: visual thoughts, auditory thoughts, smell thoughts. And that's actually probably a more sophisticated way to look at the thing, because we are just a composite. And so looking at those things separately, and then also separately and individually, and then also together as they come together to form your own consciousness, is part of what every serious mind student must do. Mm. Okay, another question before we stop?
The short one. It seems something I've noticed. It seems in almost everything, consistency is one of the most important things.
Persistence and consistency. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Look at a plant. It doesn't just stop growing one season and say, I think I'll take a season off. Or a tree or an animal or anything like that. Same thing with humans. You have to keep the faith. I'm fading pretty fast. Question?
Okay. No, that was it.
All right, sir. Well, get back to work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.